Where we curate financial, economic, and market news for the headlines that affect today's retirees. Today's headline that we're going to cover from Fox Business has to do with inflation, and real wages are not in sync. That real wages are not keeping up with the inflation numbers that we're seeing of late. What does that mean to you? We'll talk about this coming up. As always, if you hear something in today's podcast that causes you to want to take some action, do something, make changes to your situation, please be advised that today's podcast should not be construed as specific tax, legal, or investment advice. If you hear something in today's podcast that causes you to want to take some action, make some changes, please confer with the appropriate tax, legal, or investment professional prior to making any decisions. Okay. Fox Business had an interview today, and they highlighted the fact that real wages and inflation were not keeping pace. For those of you who see me looking over, it's because I moved it. So it was Tyler Goodspeed from the Council of Economic Advisors. He was the acting chairman, former acting chairman of the Council of Economic Advisors. And as he was looking at numbers for inflation and wages, we have seen wage growth in the aggregate, but unfortunately, when we see the wage growth and we then take into account the effect of inflation, we're actually seeing wage decreases. So it's going to be very important for the Federal Reserve to start looking at these kinds of numbers, and they're going to start thinking about taking some action relative to controlling inflation. If we cannot get some sort of tax reform done, if we cannot see some sort of method to control inflation other than the Federal Reserve raising interest rates, then it's very likely that we could see the Federal Reserve raising interest rates when we see these types of numbers. And again, these types of numbers being specifically, wages are not increasing when we take into account the effect of inflation. So this should not be any surprise, because it's not as if companies suddenly have a lot more dollars to spend. The way that these companies are going to increase their wages for employees would be by having extra profit, not by having extra just gross income, but by having extra profit. So while we've seen earnings in the markets on the rise, what we're not necessarily seeing is an increase in profit. In fact, many times we might see a very big increase in gross earnings, but when we're talking about profits, we're not seeing these types of increases. And the reason is that if I'm a manufacturer of, say, pencils, and I want to manufacture more pencils because my demand is going up, because the word on the street is that schools are now opening, and so I'm going to increase my manufacturing on pencils, and I'm selling more pencils, and the stores are buying them, and everything's great, and I'm selling them at a higher cost, my gross earnings is going to go up. So I sell my pencils, I'm making the same number of pencils as I used to, but I'm selling them for a higher price to Target and Walmart and these other places. And so Target and Walmart is giving me more revenue, but what's missing here is that while my earnings are up, my profits are actually down because I had to go and pay more for the goods and materials. So timber prices are way up. Last time I checked, a pencil is, at least a good part of it is wood. And so when I went to make my pencils and buy the materials to start manufacturing those pencils, those costs went up. And so yes, my gross income went up, but my net profit went down. Therefore, when I go back to hire some additional staff and employees, I do not have the ability to pay more now than I did in the past. That possibility does not exist for me if I'm that pencil manufacturer in this scenario. So we're seeing inflation primarily because we've given direct payments to individuals. And when you give direct payments to individuals, yes, it helps out these people who are in need because of things like the COVID pandemic, and so they're out of work or had been out of work, and certainly we're all in favor of helping those who are in need. But the problem with giving direct payments, as we did, is that you're giving people dollars for non-productive participation in the economy. So they have a non-productive participation in the economy, and what that means is that they're not producing either a good or a service, and so they're not increasing the amount of goods and services. So there's a supply and demand issue here. If I'm a laborer, and normally my job is producing pencils, let's stick with the pencil example, and my normal job is producing pencils. I'm not there to produce the pencils. So what does that mean? The supply of pencils has come down. But because the government decided to pay me because they felt bad for me, then I got an income despite the fact that I wasn't producing those pencils. So there's less supply of pencils in the market because I'm the pencil producer laborer, and that's a mouthful. And so the pencils aren't in the market, but the money still is because I was still paid. So supply and demand. I didn't increase the production in the economy. Now you could apply this to basically anything. Apply it to pharmaceuticals, apply it to providing health care, put it to being a massage therapist. Okay, fewer massage therapists, you're going to get higher prices because there's more demand on a lower supply of that service. What about food service? Less food service, more demand, or the same amount of demand, less supply of that service, and so the prices will go up. On top of that, the prices can go up because there's the same amount of dollars in the system. I still am going to spend money to buy groceries and buy gas for my car and pay my mortgage and all of that. So that all still exists. The dollars coming into me are still flowing into the economy. And so we have a greater supply of dollars, a lower supply of goods and services because I'm a non-productive person. Okay, I don't mean that insultingly for people who are in this position. It's not an insult, it's an economic view. When you are a non-productive participant in the economy, all you do is create inflation because you're not doing something to produce a good or service, and so the supply of whatever your normal talents and abilities would be is gone down, but the amount of dollars is still high, so you're going to have inflation. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing this inflation. Also, because we are seeing that inflation, it then leads directly into the fact that companies often have a supply chain. And so as I look to my supply chain to produce the pencil or to be a restaurant, right? If I'm a restaurant, what do I need in my supply chain? I need my plates and my silverware and my cooking utensils and my ovens and my fryers, and I need the food. I need the beef and the chicken and the vegetables. And I need all of these goods still, but the problem is there's fewer people participating in the production of those goods, so I then have to pay more for those goods. Then, subsequently, as I pay more for those goods because there's less of them, I pass that on to the customer. So I pass on the cost, the higher cost of my goods to my customer. They pay it, and so my earnings goes up. Why do they pay it? Do people suddenly have more money? Yes, sort of, in a sense. They have more money than is reasonable for the amount of labor and production that they're adding to the economy. So they do have the money in what's the word I'm looking for? Out of balance. Okay, it's out of balance. That's not the right word, but it's out of balance the amount of dollars people have relative to their productive energy that they're putting into the economy. And so that is absolutely going to cause inflation, and that's what we're seeing. What it doesn't allow for is for employers to increase wages. So you would think that as companies see higher gross earnings, that they should be able to afford to pay higher wages so that their employees can experience the benefits of the inflation, hypothetically, and that they have more dollars in their pocket. Unfortunately, inflation is only hurting people, with some exceptions, a few exceptions, but this inflation is not helping people at all. It's not a good thing. It's not helping those at the bottom tier. It's not helping those at the mid tier. It's not helping those at the mid-high tier, quite frankly. The only folks who are really benefiting from this level of inflation are those at the very, very tippy top, and it could be argued that even they are not benefiting a ton right now. But this is where we're at. So there's consequences when we issue direct payments into the economy for non-productive labor, and those penalties we are experiencing right now. And that's all we have for today. I'm going to link the article, link to the interview, in the description section. If you like this video, share it with someone. If they don't understand what inflation's all about, hopefully I did a good enough job that causes you to say, hey, I know somebody who could learn about this, and you'll share this video. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow our Facebook page. As always, if you have not attended one of our live workshops, we'd encourage you to do so. We'd love to have you at one of our live events. With that, we'll wrap up for today.